Hello, namaskar. Welcome you all in my new video where today I'll be taking the topic privatization, another important topic from economics class 11th, useful for both boards CBSE and ISC. So before I start the topic, I would like to say here that please do subscribe the channel, like the videos and do share it. If you have any doubts regarding any of the explanation, your comments is valuable to me. Any suggestions if you want to give regarding this video formation or any changes you want me to bring in, please do comment, do give your opinions, that will be considered on. So without much delay, let's start the topic privatization, one very important and interesting topic. I hope nowadays when it comes to buying clothes or choosing any beverages, we have so many choices, right? We go for the brands now, right? So like even if I talk about the beverages of soft drinks, so you may have so many choices. You may go for 7 Up, Miranda, Fanta, so on, Pepsi, Appy Fizz, so on, right? So we have so many brands available to us, be it for your eatables or for your, if I talk about the clothes, right, durable goods or any sort of goods which we usually use in our day-to-day life. We have so many choices available with us thanks to the privatization policy that had been adopted in India in the year 1991. As I've already mentioned in the previous video, that year 1991 is very important from the economic history point of view, because this year 1990s to 91, 92, so many economic reforms have been introduced. Those economic reforms had made possible to India to stand in international market. So that LPG, which I've already discussed in my previous video, if you have gone through it, you might have heard that liberalization, privatization and globalization. So on liberalization, I've already made up the video. This is this privatization. So let's get to the meaning of privatization. What is the meaning of privatization? As the name itself says, privatization, right? So here we are going for the private thing. Now what is this private thing here actually? So the process which leads to transfer of ownership of public sector enterprises from the government to the private sector. So what is happening over here? You see here that ownership is being transferred. Ownership, what is the ownership here? Ownership is that the right or the power to make any decisions in taking regarding the administration or the shares, the stake that is being held by the public sector, or you say the government has taken up or maybe holding some shares, 100% shares, say for in a company. Now when they transfer this, out of this 100%, if they transfer say 49% to a private company, it is considered as a private sector. Even if 49, if instead of 49, if they have transferred 51%, that is a complete privatization, you may say. It's a case of a complete privatization. Here I'm referring to the partial and complete privatization, but that much deep insight is not required over here. We are just going through the thorough meaning of this privatization. So here the the thing which is going on here, that the ownership has been transferred by public sector, or you may say the government has transferred their ownership to the private sector. Now there are certain cases, or you may say certain connotations. Connotations means certain likely cases where you may understand the meaning more precisely. So here I have chosen 3 important connotations. As you say, denationalization, then it comes to disinvestment, and then comes a delicensing and de-reservation. So let's get to the meaning one by one. All very simple, कुछ भी इसमें hard नहीं है. It's just the main concept is repeating again and again. So denationalization. Acha, before going into this connotation, I would like to bring your attention towards a little history of this, how this privatization has came to the origin. It refers back to the 1980s and 1990s. I'm referring. The year is 1980s and 1990s. That is in the Western countries, you say United Kingdom and USA, where this concept has been originated, or they have adopted this concept. So in United Kingdom, under the leadership of Mrs. Thatcher, under the governmentship of Mrs. Thatcher, Margaret Thatcher, the exact name, Margaret Thatcher, under her leadership, this privatization concept has been developed or has been adopted. From there onwards, across the world, slowly, gradually, after seeing the benefits, other countries also adopted. Like in India, we have adopted in 1990s. So denationalization. What's this denationalization? So here, denationalization means you are transferring the total government's ownership of the assets to the private sector to the 100%. That means government is selling all its assets, 100% power or 100% ownership of the assets to the private sector. That is denationalization, when the 100% stake has been sold out by the public sector. Then there is a disinvestment. It is also sort of a denationalization, but the transfer of, like in denationalization they were transferring 100%, but in disinvestment they were transferring less than 100%. That is the case of disinvestment. And lastly, delicensing and dereservation. So basically this concept goes with any policies which helps in the expansion of private sector, or any policy which helps in the encouragement of private sector to come forward, comes under delicensing. Like example I would suggest here, this is subsidies are usually given by the government. Subsidies is sort of a financial help, right? Financial assistance to purchase any capital goods or any anything, any goods, commodities. So in that case, and when it comes to, when government is in power, they might be providing these subsidies. But if the government has followed the policy of dereservation or delicensing, that time they may cut all the subsidies, no more subsidies. So this could be the example. That examples applied in India. All right, all examples, all explanation totally in reference to our country. So now the next slide goes here. Why do we need privatization? So it's a sort of a debate. See, privatization is something which has been a debate for many decades. So there are certain arguments which that justifies that privatization is the need of hour, and there are again certain argument that says no, we don't need privatization. What are the causes? Why should not we opt for a privatization? So first we'll look into the point that justify that privatization is needed. So here, as you can see, the first point over here, the managerial efficiency. So managerial efficiency means the working capability, right? Working capability. So privatization basically through disinvestment. Okay, disinvestment, if you remember, where the selling of shares happen, but less than 100%. All 100% shares are not being sold. Only maybe 60% or 51% assets have been sold to the private sector. That it is a case of a disinvestment. So here, when this disinvestment happened, so the private shareholders come in a direct interest, right? Because now they know they are the owner, so they would like to increase the profit. So they would like to bring more clarity, more transparency, more systematic working procedure that should be adopted in the management. So management here would not be subjected to political pressure and interference. There would not be any political pressures and interference. Everything is upon them. The management is totally responsible or accountable for their work. And since private concerns, private enterprises basically profit minded, so their working procedure goes systematically in order to avoid any losses. Then you see here in the second point, it is competitive environment. Again important. What is the competitive environment? You see here the transfer. What is happening here? We are transfer of ownership of the private sector enterprises to the public sector enterprises to the private sector. So this will help to compete with other similar enterprises. This will bring the spirit of competition, healthy competition environment, profit oriented decision. So privatization policy always they help in stimulating or infusing the commercial spirit. Commercial spirit means they always go for the profit oriented decisions, right? which helps to improvement in the efficiency and the performance of the enterprises. Then revival of sick units. So you see, before this LPG policy has been adopted, many public enterprises were going under huge losses. Like a number of public enterprises have been incurring losses for years to come, years. So to overcome these losses, this privatization policy has been adopted. All the loss-making units have been sold out. Their shares have been sold out to the private sector. Then you see here the flexibility in decision making. The last point is flexibility in decision making. You see, flexibility here brings that there is no more bureaucratic process. I mean, there is not political interferences. There is no such procedure or such hierarchy that may results in delay in decision making. Right, flexibility has been brought out. That means delayed decision making is often, say, it is said in a management, if decision is delayed na, it means there is no decision. So now because of privatization, it become possible to take quick and timely decision, which actually justify the efficiency, of the management. So timely and good decision, proper decision, prudent decisions will improve the efficiency of business operation. So this was the argument that goes in favor of privatization. If I go for the arguments against privatization, so here you see social welfare neglected. As I already said, that totally their privatization privatization of public sector may not possible, because private sector sometimes they do not go for for the social welfare thing. They are totally, their mind is totally, the object is totally profit maximization. So social welfare somehow it gets neglected. Then unemployment possibility, to cut the cost of production. Unemployment, they may entrenched, or they may make the employees go out of the job, right, just for the cost cutting. So this unemployment possibility still stays there. Then corrupt practices. The third point is corrupt practices. Here you see there's a possibility, there is always a possibility of undervaluation of assets of the public sector units. So this is a case that gives rise to corrupt practices. That means their bribery comes in, to show, public sector wants to show the private sector ki by our assets values are not that much, or they may be undervalued their assets by giving some bribery to the officers of the private sector. So this happens, that actually gives the rise to the corrupt practices. Then private monopoly. Now what's under this? You see here, private monopoly, that it's a general concern, or you may say a genuine apprehension that sale of a public sector undertaking, sale of a public sector undertaking to a private sector may only result in monopoly. Public monopoly may only result in instead of public monopoly, they go to the private monopoly. Right. Earlier, the same firms has been totally controlled by the state government, or say for a public sector enterprises. Now, since the shares has been sold out to the private sector, now the public monopoly has been converted into private monopoly. So there is a least difference between them. So this just the public monopoly has become a private monopoly. Like if I give an example, it has been mentioned in many of the books if you have gone through. So privatization of electricity board in Delhi, the UT of India, the capital of India, Union Territory. So what happened over there? The Delhi electricity board has been privatized. Now since it is privatized, so consumers are exploited through frequent high charges of electricity rates. So this is one of the example of private monopoly. Then uneven industrial development. Private enterprises will not be interested in projects which are risky and have long gestation period with lower profitability. Right, long gestation means it takes a long time for the manufacturing to start and gives the profit. So usually private sector do not go for the long gestation period and lower profitability. So that gives the rise of uneven or lopsided industrial development. So this was all about the rationale of privatization, what are the arguments and what are the arguments which are in favor and arguments which goes against it. If you have any doubt, please do comment and do subscribe and like my video. Thank you.